Hi, thanks for joining us on the Nourishing the Community Podcast, where we're going to be talking about all things happening in the community with nonprofits and community needs and how you, the listener, can get involved and make some change. I'm your host, Ladawna Parham. This is my co-host,
Norman Hanks. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for joining us on Nourishing the Community Podcast today. I'm Ladawna Parham with Nourish Food Bank.
And I'm Norman Hanks. And today in the hot seat is Melissa Branchau, Executive Director of Community Helpers of Rutherford County.
Good morning.
Good job.
I almost said Rutherford and Cannon. I was like, wait, stop, no.
I was
You're going
watching
too
you
far.
struggle through that.
I was.
Which is hilarious since they're in our office building.
Yeah.
So
Awesome
all the
times.
time. But to be fair, we do tend to call y'all by your initials a lot.
Yes.
Chork.
Yes.
So what is Chork? What do y'all do at Community Helpers?
So Community Helpers of Rutherford County does rental assistance, utility assistance, and medication assistance here for the residents of Rutherford County. We run a few different programs. We run the Family Collective program through United Way.
And what does that do?
That helps families with children, school-age children predominantly, to go from being unhoused and homeless to being able to get into an apartment and be housed. And we can assist with the rent and utilities there, but there's also wraparound services for educational coaching. There's the housing navigator, of course, that helps find the location, and Dominion Financial also assists there with financial planning.
Cool.
And then we have our new program is an eviction prevention program that we're getting ready to launch right now. It is still in the works with THDA. It's going to work like the Tennessee COVID-19 relief, and we'll be operating that for the next 2 years.
So
Awesome.
what will happen with that? Eviction?
So with the eviction prevention program, that allows us to pay more than the standard $500 that we normally do to help people stay into their homes. It will allow them to bring us, if they are currently in eviction status, we can pay all of the back rent in order to keep them housed, and then potentially additional costs to help stabilize them for the future.
Very cool. So for all your different services, and you may have different guidelines for each one, how do people get your services?
So we have an application that people can either pick up at the office, or they can go online and apply there.
And what's the best way for them to do it? Is it to come into the office, or is it to go ahead and do it online?
The easiest way is to do it online, but if anyone is not computer savvy or they have questions about the information that we're asking for, it's best for them to come into the office and apply in person so we can walk them through the checklist.
Do they make an appointment for that?
They don't have to make an appointment to apply, but after we receive all their paperwork, then we will set up an appointment for them to come in and actually sit down and talk to us about their needs, and then we can assist them from there.
Okay. So you mentioned the $500. Is that per service, per person? What is?
So the $500 for our standard Community Helpers program is once a year if you are elderly or disabled, and that is for either rent or utilities. For anyone else who does not fall into the elderly or disabled category, then the $500 is one time for the first year. They can come back the next year, and then there's a 2-year waiting period after that, but that is both for rent and utilities. But our prescription medication program is up to $500 a month towards copays.
That's wonderful.
And it also covers durable medical supplies.
Such as
Dexcom transmitters. I generally focus on those because we have a history of diabetes in our family. So we do the Dexcom transmitters, the Freestyle Libres, insulin syringes, items like that we can get through Beckman's Pharmacy.
Okay, so Beckman's is a partner of you guys through that. Do people who are getting the prescription assistance or the medical assistance, do they need to go to Beckman's, or can they go to another one?
So they have to get the prescriptions filled through Beckman's Pharmacy. After they apply through us, they can take the prescriptions to Beckman's, or Beckman's can transfer them from whatever pharmacy they're currently working with. And then Beckman's sends us an email every month letting us know that they need these prescriptions. And as long as it doesn't go over $500, we can help.
That's amazing. I'm curious because some people have medications that are super, super stupid expensive, right? Like diabetes medications are horribly expensive. If it hits that 500, are there other programs that Community Helpers provides that can help some of those clients?
Generally, if we can't assist them with those, we do try to connect them with most companies that do manufacture the higher end medications have their own assistance programs. So we will generally print out how they can access those programs and encourage them to go ahead and try to get assistance that way, because many pharmaceutical companies will allow you to get medications for free if they're unaffordable and if you can demonstrate that they are unaffordable.
Awesome. And you said, I mean, thank you, Trent, for that distraction, because I get distracted easily.
Yeah. In case
We
you
may
haven't
never,
met
in
That
case
is
you
okay.
haven't met
That
me,
is
Melissa.
okay.
back to that
Oh
question.
my God, shoot. Community helpers. So community helpers has been around for how long?
42 years.
Okay. And you said y'all offer utility assistance. Explain that to us.
So we are one of the largest sharing change administrators in Rutherford County. So you can come to us for Middle Tennessee Electric. The sharing change program is up to $200 per year that you can get, and it is a rolling year. We also do consolidated utility, Murfreesboro Water, Atmos Energy. I'm trying to remember the other one. Piedmont Gas is another. And if someone is in an apartment complex and they contract out the billing services, we can also help with those. So utility billing services is one we see quite often. And the $500 can go towards those as well.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
But we do have, with the voucher system, with Middle Tennessee Electric and Consolidated, if we use a voucher, that doesn't go against the $500. So someone might need $500 for rent, but still could get $200 in utility assistance through the sharing change voucher. So it does
Okay.
go a little bit above if we're able to use the vouchers.
Okay.
When would you not be able to use the vouchers?
If they've received a voucher already that month,
Okay.
or I'm sorry, for that year, or if we are out of funds for the month. So we get a certain amount of money every single month through that program, and we do generally run out around the 25th of the month for Middle Tennessee Electric.
Okay.
Yeah, every month.
And then your rent assistance, is that for getting people into a place who are, say, transient at the moment and they need a deposit, or that's for people who are behind on their rent and about to be evicted? Like, what's
Most of the time, it's for people who are behind on their rent and about to be evicted, or if they're just coming up a little bit short for that month. 500 doesn't go very far these days
No.
in Rutherford County for
I
I mean,
don't
rent.
it's
think that's
amazing.
even
It's
half of-
phenomenal, but
it does
it's
not go very far.
Yeah.
So generally, we will give them a list of other agencies that they can also contact, so they can kind of go around and see who else might be able to assist them. But our 500 generally does not cover everything. And then our deposits, if they're coming out of a homelessness situation and they're going through a program at like Journey Home or Greenhouse Ministries, and they can show that they have worked through the program, then we're able to help them with a deposit for $500 as well.
great. I think that what you said about pointing them to the other resources so they
Mhm.
can put those together to cover the needs is so important. One of the things we talk about a lot is, as you know, there are some nonprofits that are, if you get the service from
Mhm.
us, you can't be getting it from anybody else. And we're very much not that way,
Mhm.
because we absolutely believe in building a sustainable foundation for those folks so that they can move out of needing those services. And so we know, just like 500 isn't going to cover
Mhm.
all of somebody's rent, especially in Rutherford County. The food that we provide isn't going to cover their entire month, and they come once a month to get that. And so we want them to access as many resources as possible, because if they're able to stay in their home, if they're able to put fuel in their car so they can get to work and keep that job, if they're able to provide for daycare so that they can keep that job, all of those pieces help them begin to move out of that cycle, move towards sustainability. And so I just think that's really important that you encourage them to access those other resources. And I think another thing that we've talked about before is kind of the misperception of what that client base looks like, and that, oh, they're not working and that's why they need that help. And that's not generally the reality. I mean, sometimes that happens, but I mean, if you look at somebody who's even making $60,000, which is like, what is it? Almost 4 times above what the poverty guideline states,
Yeah.
for here. If they're making 60,000 after taxes, they're only bringing home $4,000 a month, or a little less than $4,000 a month. And so when you look at rent, being around 2,000 here, anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 on average. And that's not like for something
Oh, no,
fancy.
it's not.
You
It
know,
is not. It's very
it is,
basic housing, I
yes,
say.
very basic housing. It is incredibly difficult to live on that remainder by the time you have vehicle insurance. Here's hoping you have health insurance, because most people, that's one of the first things that starts slipping, because they can choose not to go to the doctor, but they don't want to choose not to keep a roof over their kid's head. And then you're putting gas in the car and all of that. I mean, there just is not enough to live on. And that's for somebody who's making $60,000, which used to sound like so much. But when you start breaking it down to what that looks like each month, it isn't. And on top of that, the folks who are accessing resources like ours wouldn't even qualify at that, because they'd be so far above the poverty guideline. So they don't even have services. So when you start looking at folks who actually qualify for your services, how little they're bringing home each month, I mean, it's pretty phenomenal. And I think if many of our listeners were trying to live on that, and these are folks who are working 1, 2, sometimes 3 jobs, but again, if it's not hitting even 60,000 with those 3, which in minimum wage employment is pretty hard to do, how are they gonna pay for anything?
And
So
that's why we have the resource lists for sure. And then our one program that we do have, the eviction prevention program, that one actually goes up to 80% AMI, which is about 325% of the poverty guides.
that's
So we
awesome.
can go much higher on that program, while our standard programs are 200% of the poverty level.
That's phenomenal.
So we can go a little bit higher with that one, because it's definitely needed. And we are starting to take applications on that one right now. And we're seeing people who are, $8,000, $9,000 behind in rent again, because the rental assistance from THDA had dried up, and there has been a gap in assistance there. And like I said, the 500 doesn't help. So just the 500 isn't going to keep somebody in their home, and the landlords won't even take it.
Talk to you at that. Yeah.
So you keep saying other resources, and I'm curious what some of the other rental resources are out there, like in our community.
So with the community here, we generally are recommending people go and speak with some of our churches here in town. We have a few in particular that if we can show that we're assisting with a certain amount, they will often match it if they have the resources. But that, of course, is always dependent on how much is in their coffers at that time, because it is completely dependent on their Sunday collections for many of these programs. And then there are a few other locations that have the same program that we do, and as long as people have not received up to 18 months in that other program, they may be able to go to some of the other locations and receive assistance after they receive assistance to us, but that max is going to be 18 months. So generally, it's mostly the churches here in town that we do recommend out to for rental assistance, because a lot of times by the time they've come to us, they've already been to a few of the other ones.
Do you find you get any requests for assistance that are completely outside your scope of services?
We do. We do. There is a little bit of a misconception. We do help with a little bit of dental assistance. And sometimes people will bring us their medication or their medical bills, like straight from the doctor, like they've been in the hospital, and they're looking for assistance because they think that we help with medical expenses, not so much just prescription costs.
Right.
That transportation cost is another one. We do not do gas cards out of our location. It is something that we would be open to doing if we had more flexible funding. Most of our funding is grant funded, so we are constrained on what we can do there. But yeah, we sometimes get some random things, and then some of the durable medical stuff that we can't get through Beckman's, we're unable to assist with. So I know we can do shower chairs, but we can't always do like medical grade car seats,
Right.
and items like those.
Those are expensive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they are. They're very expensive.
Go ahead.
No.
I lost my thought. I'm sorry.
I looked that way, and
There's
it
a
just
blue
went
light that keeps
squirrel.
flashing on this TV in case no one else sees it.
It drives you all the crazy.
And it's catching my eye every time it does it. I'm having issues. I'm sorry.
What about mental health services? Does anybody ever come to you for drug or alcohol rehabilitation services or for mental health support?
Not normally. If they did, we would recommend that they go over to volunteer behavioral health. If it's not, offered through their health insurance, or if they do not have health insurance, we would recommend they go over there to mental health co-op, but it's not something that we do offer from community helpers.
Right. I knew that you all didn't, but I wondered if that came up because of that whole belief that
Yeah.
you provide all the medical services.
It does come up sometimes, and especially sometimes people are just looking for, recommendations on where they can go. And we have had to make a few phone calls to other locations just because we have had some concerns doing interviews about someone's state of mind when they're actually in at the interviews. And, we also do refer out to the domestic violence shelter because we do have that. Sometimes they'll come to us first, and really it's better if they go over to domestic violence first and see if they can assist, and then we'll help after they're completed.
We had their center director on
Mhm.
several weeks ago, Erica Downing, and she's just great. But we were talking with her about folks often will come to a service like yours or a service like ours first because they want to know that they can get the basic needs met, especially if they have kids, get those basic needs met for their family before they're willing to take that step and leave. So I'm not surprised to hear them coming in.
Go ahead.
No, by all means.
Are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to ask. So we are big. Nourish is big on partnering with other agencies in the community because, again, we want people to get all the resources they're able to find, right? Who are some of the major organizations y'all partner with to make sure that your clients are getting the needs met that they need met?
Well, other than you all, because of course, if they come to us, we're generally trying to make sure that they at least come over and see you all. We do a lot with United Way here in town, because they're one of our funding partners, but we do know that they offer some resources that we can access. For example, one of our families needed assistance with obtaining beds, and they have an agreement with Mattress King. So we were able to get them some beds at a relatively decent price, other than them having to go and actually purchase them elsewhere. So they would be a big one. Stepping stones here in town. We do often send people over there, and I know I can always call over there and ask to see if they have any space. Salvation Army as well. The shelters are always a difficult one because they're always full, and we don't have nearly enough of them. And then often we'll reach out to Murfreesboro Housing just to see if they have any availabilities. We've had a large quantity of our elderly population come in and saying the apartments that we've been renting, they're making everyone leave and they are converting them, and we don't know where to go.
Yeah.
So that would be another one that we often do refer out to a lot as well.
Yeah. So scenario, because we have this situation happen fairly regularly. You have someone come in that has nowhere to stay, right? They're just trying to find somewhere to sleep for the night other than their car or directly on the street. Who is the first people you call? Who's the first organization you turn to?
So if they're female, I'm generally going to reach out to Stepping Stones first. And then we do check with Salvation Army, and then we do tell them to check with Journey Home. But those are really our only options that we're aware of right now. Family Collective does do some hotel payments, but you have to be in their system, and there is a pretty decent size waiting list right now to get into there. And then every once in a very blue moon, we've had the ability to help in that capacity, but that is completely at the discretion of our board, and it does not happen very often.
Understood.
Yeah, if we had the flexible funding for us to be able to do that, it would be something we could do more often.
And like you said, Stepping Stone stays full and with such a waiting list. And then Salvation Army has so few beds ever available. And so that's not typically an option. And then Journey Home, unless it's during the coldest nights period, they're not providing overnight shelter. So it is such a tough
There
That's a tough
really needs to
situation
be
for
more
folks.
resources in this town, more facilities, something's got to give. And I know people are afraid that if they build the shelters, that more people are going to come in, but I don't think that the residents here understand how many people there already are that are unsheltered. And like you said, if it's not coldest nights, they are outside on the streets. You may not see them, but they are there.
And we had some times during the summer when, with our heat index, we're at well over 100, and you have an elderly person living on the street in that heat.
It's hard. It's very hard.
It's hard. It's a bad situation. But
no, I was just going to ask. So I know that you work ridiculous hours. You're always at the building, and I'm like, go home, Melissa. You can't stay here all night. Like, we've got to close the doors at some point. And you're like, no, I'm sleeping. It's okay. Do you ever take time to go out and meet the other organizations in town and sort of tour their sites and see what they're actually doing?
So we are planning on doing that soon since I took over as director. I was interim for a couple months last
Mhm.
year and then took over in January. I was both the director and the accountant for that
Mhm.
position for a very long time. So now that we do have somebody in the bookkeeping seat at the office, we are hoping to start going out and meeting with others and participating in more of the fairs and trade shows in this area so that people can know what we can offer. But we have not gotten to do that very much lately, but it is something we would love to start doing.
Well, for what it's worth, we think that you do a phenomenal
I
job.
appreciate it, and I do not
And
sleep at the office. I do promise that.
I've slept at the
That's why
office.
I
I'm
have
not
a key.
judging.
That's why I have a key.
but you can tell when we're in the office, you can tell, and we've talked about this before, there's such a healthy, caring, compassionate vibe that comes from you and your staff, and we're really excited to see that. About how many people a month would you say that you serve through all your programs?
So we're seeing, I think when we averaged it out, we're averaging about 80 to 85 a month that we are helping. Some of that is a longer term case management sort of program. So we might, through Family Collective, there was 25 that will serve on an ongoing basis, but they require such a large amount of time from the staff.
Yes.
So we don't have quite as many going through there, but it does run about 80 to 85 outside of our Family Collective program. And that's just because we are a small staff. And right now we are only open Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but we are going to be open Monday and Friday by appointment um, coming up soon once we get our caseworker seat filled because we now have to replace a caseworker.
Yeah. So is that 80 to 85? Is that families or is that individuals?
So it's probably individuals, but we're not counting the entire family set. So if we were to pull the numbers, I'm sure that would be much higher, but that's the number of people that we actually have on our spreadsheet of we provided rental assistance or we provided
Mhm.
utility assistance, but it's only counting that one person, for
Okay.
the actual assistance. So that's assistance going out.
And I think that you sort of touched on it, but I think it's important for our audience to understand that um, services provided can look like a lot of different things, and those
Mhm.
numbers thrown out can look like a lot of different things. And I think sometimes people are looking for what they feel like is the big wow number.
Mhm.
But the big wow number sometimes is this one time in out service. They
Mhm.
may never see them again, which is a necessary service, but it's easier to push those people through more
Mhm.
quickly because it's just they come in, they get whatever that service might
Mhm.
be, they go out wherever it is
Mhm.
at whatever that direct service nonprofit is. But for those kinds of services that require a longer term time investment, even outside of the family collective, which
Mhm.
we'll get to case management in a second, but even just making those phone calls
Mhm.
to Beckman's or figuring out whether they've used the vouchers at
Mhm.
different places so that you can stack that with the funding that they've got and finding other resources for them and
Mhm.
referring them out. All of that takes so much longer than here you go, here you go, here you
Yeah.
go. And so it should not be about the wow big number factor. It should be a wow, look at the difference we're making in these lives factor and how much more stable they
Mhm.
are afterward. And I think that's just really important for people to understand. And then within the case management piece, we have recently been in this situation of trying to help folks understand
Mm.
who aren't familiar with administering case management. And so they weren't as familiar with you have to establish a relationship with them because if you're going to do effective case management, you need to have a trust-based relationship so they are clear with you about what their barriers are,
Mhm.
because if they're not, you're going to give them resources or referrals or connect them to things that are wildly inappropriate for them and
Mhm.
do them no good, and it's going to fail. So you have to invest the time in getting to know them, building that relationship, establishing that trust, and then identifying what those goals are and steps to work through those goals, and then having that follow-up with them. That is a lot of time
It is.
per person. So there's a lot of ramp up time to them even setting those goals or with you, and then the time to provide that service, and then the time to follow up to see what that change is. And so I think it's huge if, you're working with 25 families a month through that program.
Mhm.
That is a very deep,
It
long,
is.
intentional process. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was super clear to folks who maybe don't know how that works.
Yeah.
And speaking of case management, the Family Collective, which
Mhm.
is funded by United Way, correct?
United Way of Greater Nashville, yes.
That program, what does that look like? What is that program? How
So
does it work?
that program focuses on people who are unhoused and have children. So, like we had discussed before, with all the shelters and there's not nearly enough, we cannot keep having people living in their cars
Mhm.
with kids who have to get up and go to school the next day.
Mhm.
It's not conducive for families. It's not conducive for education. So that program sits down and actually works with the individuals that are in it, and they make sure that the kids get what they need to be able to get to school, whether that's backpacks. We had backpacks delivered for any of the students that were within our case management. They were gigantic filled backpacks so that they would have everything they needed to start the school year. It could look like referrals over to the employment navigator. Maybe the person is working, but what they're making is not quite enough, and they would benefit from an additional certification. The employment navigator helps to find all of that various information, hook them up with the resources to get those trainings so that they can make more money, so that they can get out of poverty and be able to no longer be in the program and graduate and be either on to what they refer to as long-term case management or I can't remember the exact term they use for it right now in that particular program, but some of the folks will of course slide back, but that program is it's more for, like I said, families and people who need that extra hand to be able to get out into the county and actually be able to be sustainable.
And how long have y'all been running that program?
I want to say we started that in the beginning of 2021, and then I had come to Community Helpers about towards the end of that year. So we've been running it almost a full 3 years now.
And just because I'm curious, and you may not know the answer, and that's
Mhm.
fine. How many people have y'all graduated from that program since its inception?
Yeah, that I am not 100% sure. I know we are
Okay.
getting ready to have our conference in about 2 weeks where they're going to be giving out all the numbers and everything. I know that they had a bunch of percentages at our last meeting, but I cannot rattle them off the top of my head. If you need percentages, you've got to warn me.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I was just curious. Yeah. So with so Nourish has a new program that we
Mhm.
started last year.
Mm.
Last year. Nourishing the Whole.
Mhm.
And we have a client intake coordinator, I guess is what do we call her?
Our wraparound,
Our
now we
wraparound
call her
services.
Nourishing the Whole coordinator, but it's our
Mhm.
wraparound services coordinator.
So she works with clients to help them find any client,
Mhm.
like anyone that needs extra help, right? Besides just food, we try to refer them over to her so that she can help them find jobs,
Mhm.
help them find resources that they may not be able to find on their own. Gets them hopefully into housing. She does a lot for these clients,
She's helped
and
provide furnishings and kitchen appliances and
clothing
clothing and
and so many
to
things.
help them get that jump start.
Right. Yeah. And I mean she's placed, I don't know, 30, 40 people in jobs in the past 6 months.
Less than 6 months,
Yeah,
yeah.
like I don't know how she does it. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't keep
Heather's
up with what she
amazing.
Yeah.
keeps up with. Yeah. How many case managers do y'all have with the Family Collective?
We have 3.
Okay.
Yeah, there are 3 full-time case managers that we have on staff.
But y'all aren't the only organization that provides that service, correct?
We are not. So there's us and Journey Home right now that is in Rutherford County
Mhm.
doing that. And then I want to say they cover it's either 13 or 17 counties across
The
Tennessee.
state.
Mhm.
Okay. Doors of Hope used to do it,
They
right?
did. They
Okay.
did, but they took a step back.
Yeah. They've
Yeah.
taken a big step
Yeah.
back recently.
And
Mhm.
we
With
actually
their
absorbed
shelter
we
closing.
absorbed their clients.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. Good for y'all.
Yeah, we absorbed the caseload over there. So, but
Which
we
is
were
great that
able
you were
to.
able to
Yeah.
step in and help, but I know that's got to be
Yeah, well,
stressful.
across the 3 staff members, they were able to divide it up and make it manageable.
That's good. How many clients y'all currently have in the Family Collective program?
I want to say right now there's 27 on our caseload between the 3 case managers, and they range from people who are completely homeless and unhoused, some that are in hotels, to being the ones that are actually housed, and then up to the ones that are stable. So they do kind of run the gamut, and it can change every single day. But
Mhm.
the case management part is so important because if you don't have that relationship built, they're not
Mhm.
comfortable enough to let you know, hey, I lost hours at work and now my water's behind. And if I don't keep my water paid, then I'm going to get evicted. So
Yep.
you have to make sure that the relationships are there and able to, make sure the program is successful.
Mhm. No, I totally agree. That was a big
100%.
conversation we had when
Mhm.
we decided to start the wraparound services program, was the importance of building those connections with the clients.
Yeah.
So,
And community helpers has always been very, very much just crisis based. But we have in the last 6 to 8 months tried to be a little bit more client facing and make sure that everyone is very comfortable. It's not uncommon for people to come in and I'm in the floor with one of the clients, like filling out the paperwork for them because they're elderly and they can't come up to the counter and stand, and it's just easier for me to just be kind of in the middle of it. And I don't like to just sit in my office. I do like to be in the center and assisting as many people as I can because it's very different than what I used to do
mhm.
for employment, and it really feels like it's feeding a certain need in my soul to be able to get out there and actually help. Where before, when I was working it, I made it work, to fill that void. But yeah, this is definitely. I feel like things in my past have made it to where I can be here.
And has anyone told you about self-care yet?
They have,
Because
and I think you saw my attempt at a self-care day, and it was a wagon full of work that I was taking home.
yeah,
So
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Self-care and vicarious trauma.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
the
we're getting
burnout
there.
is real.
The
It
burnout
It
is
is.
is
real.
it
It
is real.
is. It
That's why when
is.
I say go home, I'm not saying go home
Yeah.
not to
Yeah.
work. I'm saying get out of the office
I know.
because you will burn out. It
I know.
happens.
If I can keep staff and not have people let me know that they're going to go somewhere else, because in nonprofit world, there
It's
is not a lot of benefits. There's
no.
not a lot of 401ks or IRAs or health insurance or
Mm-mm.
anything like that. So our
Yeah.
current staff is very lucky that that is all covered on other sides. We've got it either personally or through spouses, but yeah, no, we do have to have that new case manager, so you'll probably see me a little extra.
Yeah. Well, we have said before that if we ever had the opportunity to hire Phoenicia away from you, we would
Oh,
do
I
so.
know. Believe me, I know y'all
She's so
have
great.
mentioned that before. But yeah, no, Fernisha is wonderful. We are very glad to have her, and to be able to hire her directly from being our intern was really good because there was very minimal training at that point.
Yeah.
It is great that you have an opportunity to engage with your clients and be a part of their life. And I think that it can make you so much more of an effective leader because you see what your staff
Mhm.
are going through and where those gaps are and how you can help support them. Um, we always laugh because I'm not good at being
Mhm.
front facing because I can't shut it off. I have no
Mhm.
ability
Yeah.
whatsoever to shut it off. And I think that that's a special gift. Like Joyce, who's our client intake
Mhm.
specialist in the office that she's phenomenal. She has an
Mhm.
ability to be compassionate and show love and give hope and
Mhm.
provide that service and then be like, okay, have a great day and move
Yeah.
on to the next client. And when she goes home at night, she's able to leave that at the
Mhm.
office and still be that person the next day. I don't.
Mhm.
I'm a complete basket
Mhm.
case. If somebody is having a trauma, I am right there
Mhm.
in it with them and I can't
Yeah.
let go. And so I envy
Mhm.
being able to do that. Um, but also that is part of my
Mhm.
self-care
Yeah.
such as it is. Um,
Yeah.
is not
And that's
doing
where
that.
I'm a
Mhm.
little different. I enjoy the working with the
Mhm.
clients. She's told me before, you're much happier when you're
Yeah.
actually working
Yes.
hands-on with
Mhm.
clients. And it's true because I love to hear their stories and figure out how to make them better,
Yeah.
make their lives better, right? Yeah, it's just who I am, I guess.
Yeah.
But I do burn out and I'm like, get me out of there. I can't take another one
Yeah.
right
And I'm
now.
like,
Yeah.
you just tell me what they need and I'll make it happen back here. But
Mhm.
I
Right.
don't, if they're crying, I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm done.
And
Yeah.
Miss
So
Joyce on many occasions has come out and been like, you need to be careful. You need to, make sure you have your guidelines and you have your parameters of what you'll allow
yeah.
them to dump on you or
Mm-hmm.
let you know that this is going on or how far we'll let them go with being loud or, because I've had to shut a few people down that they're not going to be rude to our intake staff up front on a few times. And, I've done a lot of learning since, because at first I was just like, I'm going to help everyone. I'm going to take this hour and a half and I'm going to find, whatever you
Yeah.
need.
That's
And
cute.
then to find that the person, when I made a phone call, was not being truthful with me. And, it was just like, it just completely hit, just they're not telling you everything you need to. Don't focus on just one person. There's everyone else that's coming through the store that needs help. So it's been a learning experience because my last profession was very black and white. When you're dealing with taxes, it's very cut and dry. And this is a very gray profession of trying to learn where the lines are blended. And yes, and it's not my skill set 100%, but I am learning.
And it's hard too, because stuff like that does hit you so hard, and it is not the norm, but it does happen and it does hit you. But trying to, just for your own sanity, remember that when that happens, it's coming from a place of fear and trauma, and it's coming from, I'm afraid that they won't help me and my kids if they know this, that they will judge me. And part of that is just their fears from being in a crisis. And part of that is because something like that has happened to them before. And so some of that is that relationship building and that finding over time that they won't judge. But it is hard when they're in that situation. I've talked to people about, so many people say, oh, I would die for my kids. And I think most people feel that way. But what else would you do for your kids?
Oh, yeah.
And I think when we really stop and think about what would you really do for your kids, then how can you, knowing that, sit in a place of judgment over anything anybody else, anywhere else would do to safeguard their children, And so I think that there is a lot of that goes on that puts people in a hard place. And so I appreciate that you remain compassionate through that.
Well, it's very dear to me because 20 years ago, I very well would have been one of the very people coming through the door because of things that have happened in my past. And, luckily I had a very good support system with my family, and a lot of these folks do not. And then we become their support system just to try to keep them and their family, to where they need to be, to where they're not having to worry about, DCS or anything like that.
What do I say the number one difference is every time?
Yeah. It's, it's a hard job, but I'm so glad that you've stepped in at Community Helpers. Like, it's a completely different atmosphere. And we can, the clients feel it. We can feel it when we come in every day. You're not so focused on that immediate, we've got to fix this right now. It's, what do we need to know? How do we get to know you better and actually help you? So I love that. I love it so much because we try to do that as well.
Are you loving Community Helpers?
I am. I have been very, very happy here. And, I don't know. It's just, like I said, it makes it, I don't know, I feel a little more complete. Being here, just because, like I said, had I not had my family, I would have very well been. I was 22. I had twins that came aboard, and my goodness, don't get me started. But
we love our children.
We do love our children.
Regardless of their bad choices, we still love them,
even when they're teenagers.
They will be 20. They will be 20 in 3 weeks. So he'll no longer have that excuse. But
it's always an excuse.
But being able to kind of see, what might have been our circumstances, and then, as soon as that trauma in our lives was kind of gone, then for my youngest to be diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 5, and going to the Publix pharmacy to pick up our first round of diabetic supplies and insulin and everything. And, they had not checked with our insurance. We were in the hospital for 2 days, and they send you home with no training, no nothing, to be able to handle diabetes on your 5-year-old. And they told me I had to give them $1,500 at the pharmacy because they just filled the prescriptions and they didn't check. And I was one of those mothers standing next to the pharmacy, crying my eyes out, trying to figure out, how am I going to keep my child alive when they have to have this medication? So luckily it was a mistake, and they were able to swap a few things out and actually have it covered under insurance. And it wasn't quite that bad. But I mean, people don't realize how much some of those medications do cost, and then you throw in the transmitters that run the, everything else. And just to have that luxury, will run you another $200. That's one of the things that I do enjoy about having that program for the medication, and, so that we can make sure that we can get as many people with those on them as possible.
Yeah.
But it's just, I feel like I'm where I need to be right now.
That's awesome. And those two pieces are so important. The people supports, like you have your family. I always say, the number one difference between people in my lobby and not in my lobby is when something goes wrong, some people have those people supports and some people don't. And that's really.
And it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be the family that you're born into
right.
either. It could be, people that you've made friends with in college, or, it doesn't matter what that family looks like. But if you're here by yourself and you don't have those supports, or, you've come here to go to college and your family lives far away and you don't want to tell them that you're struggling, it's hard.
It is hard. Yeah.
And that ability to advocate for yourself and say, I need you to run that again. I need some people can't. They're so used to things not going their way, or to not having a voice and to nobody listening to them. Or maybe they're just timid for whatever reason. But when they can't advocate for themselves and they don't have anybody advocating with them, then they fall through those cracks and they leave the pharmacy crying.
And sometimes they just don't know what resources are available to them either. I mean, they'll come to us if they don't know how to apply for SNAP benefits or for Families First, or to try to get a child care voucher. And then we try to make sure that either if it's not something that we can help them fill out, that we get them to someone who can.
That's awesome. Well, is there anything else that you can tell us about community helpers that you feel like people should know? Are there volunteer opportunities or ways that people can give?
So we do, we have one very static, very, very thankful for our one volunteer that comes in every week. And I mean, he is there.
He's on that phone.
Regardless.
Bless him.
I mean, we love Mr. Gene to death. We don't have a lot of volunteer opportunities just because of the information we do collect. But if someone wanted to come in, and we were talking about digitizing all of our 40 years of board notes, from all of our board meetings, stuff like that. 40. I have a whole filing cabinet. It's
awesome.
Very, I'm actually 6 months older than community helpers, like to the day. So we have a lot of notes in there. So we might be able to find things for if someone wanted to come and volunteer, but right now our biggest need is probably flexible funding, so that if we did need to go out and buy Rover passes, or if we had to have, like Uber cards so that people could get to and from work. Like I said, the grants just don't allow us to do that. So people can go to our website at chorctn.org, and there is a little donate now button, and they can either do a one-time or a monthly recurring donation.
Awesome. chorctn.org.
It's a mouthful, isn't it?
chorctn.org.
At least it's not all spelled out. It used to be Community Helpers of Rutherford County, or Community Helpers RC.
Oh my goodness.
I think that one still exists, but it takes you to an old website.
Do y'all have any social medias? Are you on the Facebooks, LinkedIn, TikToks?
We do have Facebook, and we have Twitter, and I know that we have Instagram, but I am not well versed in Instagram. And I know Fernisha has mentioned TikTok before, but I don't even have a TikTok myself, so I don't know how to work it. But
you're missing out
I need
on
to
life,
hire
Melissa.
a few younger people into my office so they can show me a few things.
They won't
I
help.
guess they won't help.
They'll get
just look at
busy
you
and
like
be
you're
like,
dumb.
figure it out.
I see that blank stare a lot at the house. So but we do, like I said, have the Facebook, and I do try to keep up with that and let people know when we're going to be open or what they need to provide if they have questions. But it's not a guarantee that we're going to monitor that 24/7.
Right. And my kids tease me about different social media things. And I'm like, yeah, well, I taught you to use a spoon. So
I mean, taught you how to use the bathroom.
Yeah. It's like when my child asks me history questions, and I go, I kicked all of that out when I had to learn how to keep you alive. So
That's good stuff right there, Melissa.
Very, very minimal on the social media side, but we're learning.
Well, thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you
This
for
has been
having me.
great. I think it's been super informative for our audience, and hopefully they'll all check out that donate now button.
That'd be very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.